On today's Locked On Jayhawks, Kansas escapes West Virginia, the magic number, down to 1 to clinch at least a share of the Big 12.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Derek Johnson. You can hear me as well. Rock Chalk Sports Talk, Monday through Friday from 3 to 6 p.m. on KLWN in Lawrence, your flagship station in town. Thanks for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get any of your podcasts. And on today's edition of Locked On Jayhawks, we're going to be going over KU just scathing by West Virginia, almost trying to kind of blow it at the end there, but able to make it out with a victory. And now they are a win away on senior night against Texas Tech from clinching a share of the Big 12. They are a win and a Texas loss, so that either means KU just beating Texas in the finale or winning the next two, or Kansas beating Texas Tech and Texas losing to TCU on the road from clinching the Big 12 outright. First, though, this episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. KU takes down West Virginia, 76-74, the final score in Allen Fieldhouse. So I guess first things first, their magic number is down to 1. Baylor did some help for you, took down Texas in Waco. And so that means the Big 12 standings, Kansas is in the number 1 position. I mean, literally, what was it, 3 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago, Kansas was 2 games behind Texas. And now they're a game in front of them. This Big 12 is ridiculous, and Kansas has gotten on a roll here. We've seen this many, many times in the Bill Self era, and they're doing it again. So the magic number is down to 1. What that magic number means, you see that a lot in like the baseball world, is that Kansas just needs either a Texas loss or a KU win to clinch at least a share of the Big 12. Now, in terms of clinching the league outright, their magic number would be 2. So you beat Tech, boom. There you go. You got it. And it's an extra celebration on senior night. By the way, get ready if you're going to the game to stay late, because if they win the game, you're going to have the Big 12 trophies come out, and you're going to have senior speeches, although there's only going to be 2 of them this year with Kevin McCullar and Jalen Wilson. So get ready to stay a little late. But once again, West Virginia put a real scare into you in Allen Fieldhouse. You were able to fight through it. You were able to come away with the victory. I think when you look at the short term, there's some things we can take away from this game, but I think the biggest long-term story for sure of this game, besides like what it does for you in trying to win the Big 12, is the health of Dajuan Harris. As of recording, don't totally know what his situation's going to be. He didn't come back into the game, which is not a great sign, though it was only with like a minute and so left to play. So, you know, maybe if that injury happens with 7 minutes to go, he comes back a few minutes later. We did see him walk through the handshake line. So that's a good sign. Didn't look to be limping at all, but also it's a lot easier to walk. I didn't know if it was his foot, his ankle, or what, than it would be to kind of run around. So we'll kind of see and what his status is for Tuesday's game against Texas Tech. If you don't have him, the game becomes a lot more of a, I don't know, maybe not still a toss-up because you're still at home. You still should have the better team. But it becomes a lot more tenable for Texas Tech to pull the upset if Dajuan Harris can't go, especially after Bobby Pettiford and Joe Yesufu just had a game where they kind of struggled, and they'd be the guys that you'd be looking to fill in. So that's kind of the biggest long-term story. You just hope that he's all right. He is arguably the most valuable player on KU's team. He played so well against West Virginia to help you win, and he has been on an absolute tear here of late. It's not just that you hope he's back and okay. It's that you hope he's back and playing at 100% to the guy we know he's been here over the last few weeks when Kansas has been on a roll, in large part due to what Dajuan Harris has been. As far as what happened in the game, first half, you have a close game at halftime. West Virginia was hitting some tough shots. You had like Trey Mitchell hitting one off the heel that bounced in on the 3. KU had 6 offensive fouls in the first half, so you don't really expect that to repeat at all. It was kind of a slow first half as it was for the game, for the bench. Slow first half, and kind of was for the game too for Jalen Wilson. He didn't have like a super inefficient game or anything. Like I think it was only 10 shots for Jalen, but continues to kind of be, you know, not putting up the numbers we remember through the first 3 months of the season here. Don't know if it was him getting tired after trying to carry the team so much. Don't know if it's him hitting a wall. Don't know if it's teams just defending him and scouting him better over the course of the season, but that's certainly something to watch. I do think it was interesting because in some of the other games that Jalen hasn't had as good of games, like where he scored in single digits, KU has earned some big-time victories. You think back to the Texas game, you think to the TCU game last week, and I just always took that away more as, hey, if everybody on the team is stepping up, but Jalen's struggling, that is going to be more than Jalen doing well and the rest of the team struggling. But at the end of the day, you still need everybody stepping up and Jalen stepping up to be at your A+ game, which we did see that at some games early in the year, like possibly the Indiana game and for sure like the Missouri game when you beat a possible NCAA tournament team on the road by 30 points, right? That was a pure example of that. And I think this was a game where it showed you that, hey, like all your other starters stepped up, but you still almost lost the game because you do need Jalen to, get back to where he was playing earlier in the season. But it wasn't like a bad game for him. It just wasn't, again, one of the prime Jalen Wilson games that you're going to be pointing to when he's a first-team All-American at the end of the season. So then you get to the second half. KU's just hitting all these shots. I mean, they start hitting some crazy ones. Like you had the Kevin McCullar banked in 3 toward the end of the game. And it kept feeling like, okay, the Kevin McCullar banked 3, the Gradey Dick 3 to go up, whatever it was, 71 to 64, I think, or 71-65, whatever it was. And it's like, okay, they're gonna pull away here at the end. But West Virginia kept answering. Eric Stevenson hit some big shots. You had Trey Mitchell hitting big shots for him. They just kept swinging back at you and would not go away. And then toward the end of the game, I mean, in the second half, it was a problem with containing their offensive rebounding. They were just getting so many extra possessions, and then you almost turned the game over. You missed too many free throws. You almost blew that game, but in the end, you come up with a stop on the last possession, thanks to Joe Toussaint traveling. I don't know why Toussaint just didn't take the corner 3 when he initially caught the ball. I know he's not a great three-point shooter. It was kind of an open look. You had a late contest coming out for KU, but certainly, looking back for KU, it worked out in their favor and everything turned out okay for Kansas. But that would have been a torturous loss to lose in Allen Fieldhouse if you did, when you would have had the opportunity to get where you are now, where you're a step away from getting a share of the Big 12. But you won that game in the end because of your offensive shooting, minus the free throws. Free throws weren't great for you, but you shot 55% from the floor. You went 10 of 20 from three-point range. You won that game because of your shooting. You struggled with turnovers. You had 19 of them. Now, albeit, that's like one of the highest numbers of the season for KU, but there were 7 or 8 offensive fouls on KU, so you don't really expect that to happen every game. But still, probably too many turnovers. I mean, for sure. Rebounding was an issue. Defense at large was kind of an issue for KU. You just kind of won because you shot better. And that's not a win that Bill Self's going to feel great about, but that's kind of how it went for KU. So bottom line, you got the win that you needed. Texas lost. You're in good shape for the Big 12. You're in good shape for a 1 seed. You're in contention for the 1 seed overall right now if you keep winning. Maybe you even have the inside track. You just got to get Dajuan Harris healthy moving forward, and then that would be the biggest win out of all this. Who knows? We've seen so much big man injuries headed into the tournament from KU that this would just be another like eye roll of like, obviously Dajuan not a big man, but here we go, another guy, key player injured heading into the NCAA tournament. So you just hope that that doesn't happen for KU. All right, we're going to get on to our GOATs of the game. We'll get to our good and our bad. First, this episode of Locked On is brought to you by Built Bar. Are you looking for a delicious treat but don't want all of the fat and calories? Then you got to try a Built Bar. If you're like me, where you want to eat healthier but don't want to compromise taste, then try Built Bar, because healthy is actually tasty. What makes Built Bar so good, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how they do it, but these bars maintain a amazing macros and taste like a candy bar. What's even better, they're healthy, only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. You still can. You can order at built.com, but you can also get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. So head to your nearest Walmart. You can go to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, coconut puffs, Or if you're close to a Sam's Club, run in, grab a 13-bar box with hit flavors like brownie batter and churro. You can thank me later with Built Bar. Okay, getting on to our GOATs of the game here. We'll start with the good. Harris. Again, stinks that he had the injury deal with. He was so awesome for KU. 17 points, 7 of 9 from the floor, 2 of 3 from three-point range. He did have a turnover. Man, not used to seeing those from Dajuan, just the one turnover. But that is crazy. In a game where Kansas had 19 turnovers, Dajuan Harris had just one. Unbelievable. He had 6 assists to the one turnover for KU. And how many steals did he have? I mean, I think 5 for the game. It was a career high where he just there was a guy shooting and he was able to smack it down or just poking away. He was so important for you, getting out in transition, getting you easier shots, facilitating the offense, being aggressive, scoring the basketball. He was unbelievable, and certainly the MVP for my books for the game for KU, both in terms of what he did offensively and defensively. Gradey Dick gets a good GOAT. He had 16 points. He went 5 of 8 from three-point range, really got his three-point shot going again. He really shot well against West Virginia in the 2 games this season. He also added 6 rebounds. He added 3 assists. He did, I mean, I don't know, if Kansas loses that game, does he wind up here because of the late turnover and maybe struggling a bit down the stretch? Maybe not. I think overall he did play a good enough game, but yeah, certainly the finish there was not great for KU, but they were able to come out with a victory, and Gradey Dick was a big reason why they were even in that position toward the end of the game to have the lead, which they almost gave up. Kevin McCullar gets a good GOAT. How about the banked in 3, man? That was rather important for KU. He ended up with 16 points, 5 of 8 from the floor, 2 of 4 from 3, so he hit 2 threes in the same game. He also added 4 rebounds. Again, how many times this season does Kevin McCullar come up with a big defensive play toward the end? I mean, just both games last week. He has the blocks against TCU at the end of the game. This time he has the block coming over from behind on Trey Mitchell, who was on the block against Gradey Dick, and Kevin McCullar comes with the help defense, gets it away, and boom, that was a very important possession for KU. So Kevin, great on the defensive end as always. The offense came around. I mean, the offense has been coming around lately. He's been really good at driving, but I guess the shooting came around. He also hit like a deep mid-range shot too. So really good game overall for Kevin. KJ Adams gets a good go. 13 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists. Really filled up the stat sheet for you. Anytime we're seeing KJ get 5 or 6 rebounds, that's like been a good rebounding game for him. So you certainly take that. But yeah, those 5 assists, being able to operate kind of out of the short roll, being able to pull the big man Jimmy Bell away from the basket, who is a really big dude. Usually he's a guy who's going to clog the lane, and maybe he can open up a cut. Maybe he can open somebody else up from 3. That was really helpful to have KJ in the middle, as it really has all season long, because of his ability to be a good passer and get the ball out. So KJ really good. And it's funny, you had all those 4 starters. To be clear, I didn't have Jalen Wilson on the good or bad. I thought it was just a ho-hum game for Jalen, nothing to write home about, but he wasn't, a problem for you out there either. But you had 4 of your 5 starters step up and you barely needed a win. Why would that be? Well, it was the defense, which we'll get to here in a second. The last good GOAT that I have is this quote from Bob Huggins, the head coach for West Virginia. I will blast their ass as far and as long as I can if they don't let these guys in the NCAA tournament, talking about the NCAA tournament committee. So right now, West Virginia's on the bubble. They came into that game as an 11 seed. We're going to have a conversation with Graham Doran on RCST later today and see where things are at with some of the Big 12 teams. But certainly West Virginia needs to close strong. Probably win one of their last 2 here, maybe win because they'll be in the play-in game. They definitely have to win like the play-in game or whatever it's called to get into the quarterfinals of the Big 12 tournament. And then at that point, like if you can win in your first round game of the Big 12 tournament, you probably feel like you're in. If not, you're on the bubble. We're going to see some of these leagues where maybe they weren't supposed to be 2 bid leagues, like a team upsets their way through the conference tournament and wins the league and it bursts somebody's bubble. You hope that's not West Virginia, but I think I'll be really interested to see what the tournament committee does with some of these Big 12 teams toward the bottom of the league, like your Oklahoma States, West Virginia's, Texas Techs, that aren't going to have great overall records. And normally I am not a proponent of when you see these teams that are, 17 and 14 making it into the NCAA tournament over, like, for instance, a mid-major team that goes like 28 and 3. Like, I think you have to value winning because that's at the end of the day what you're doing. But in a case like this year, where the Big 12 is so insanely good, And a team that, like West Virginia, who is 5-11 in Big 12 play, if you put them in like the ACC, honestly, what's their record? Are they like the inverse of that? Are they like 11-5? I think that has to kind of matter this year. I think there should be extra respect given to those bottom tier Big 12 teams for as insane of a conference as it is. Now, if you want to put West Virginia or one of these lower Big 12 teams that don't have the great record and you feel weird about the optics and you're like, let's make them earn it in, let's put them in the play-in game, I think that's fine too. But I do think West Virginia is a tournament team, especially with Kedrian Johnson. Him coming back for the Mountaineers and being a really good point guard helps them so much, and being a scoring guy, like, he has been such a valuable player. I think they're a team that could win a game or two in the NCAA tournament, like similar to Iowa State last year, who was an 11 seed and made it to the Sweet 16. I don't rule that out with any of the Big 12 teams if they make it, even if it is in as an 11 or 12 seed. So I like that quote, though, from Bob Huggins, though, and how he pursed it out, so to speak. Okay, we'll get on to our bad goats here in just a second with Locked On Jayhawks. So finishing things up with Locked On Jayhawks with our bad goats. Tomorrow we'll have our KU Texas Tech preview. Then on Wednesday we'll recap the Texas Tech game. Friday we'll have a KU Texas preview. The day in between on Thursday, I think we're going to do something where we examine KU's case for the number 1 overall seed, where they sit. Obviously, it'll depend on what happens in the Tech game, but as Kansas at that point, if they win it, would they have clinched just getting a 1 seed in general? We'll talk all about that on Thursday's episode. So our bad goats here, team defense. You had 4 of your 5 starters step up. Jalen Wilson didn't have a bad game. He didn't have a great game. Why did you end up almost losing at home to West Virginia? 2 things. Didn't get much from the bench. We'll get to that here in a second. The other, team defense. You gave up 100.7 adjusted points per 100 possessions, according to KenPom. What does that mean? Basically adjusted with the schedule and who you're playing and everything. Or actually, I don't know if that's raw or adjusted, but whatever it is listed on KenPom. So basically, if you totaled out the amount of possessions you had and the points allowed per possession into 100 possessions, you gave up over 100 points there. Kansas coming into Saturday against West Virginia, in games where they had given up over 100 points per 100 possessions, they were just 6-4, which is still a winning record, but you compare it to when they don't, they're 17-1. Those are pretty different records, 6-4 versus 17-1. So when you hold teams under 100 points per possession, this team is darn near unbeatable. When you don't, it's more of a coin flip. And so you did that against West Virginia, which meant the game was more of a coin flip. And certainly it was toward the end of the game. You just kind of got away with one because of shot making. Honestly, Saturday's game could have been one that you could have heard. I do think this quote gets overblown because I think Bill Self, I've only heard him say it like, I don't know, maybe once or twice, is the fool's gold comment. That was one where he could have made the fool's gold comment about the game afterwards. I do think KU did a good job getting open shots, getting open threes. So you're going to make more than you don't when you do that, when you play the right way. So I don't mean this to say that, like, you know, KU shouldn't have made all those threes. But if KU goes 8 of 20 from 3 instead of 10 of 20, which would still be a really good shooting game, probably lose that game because you didn't do the little things well. And so I think if you were to ask Bill Self, like, what his favorite win of the season was, it's probably the TCU game, because they found a way to win an ugly game where they didn't play well. They didn't make shots because they made the other team play worse. If you were to ask him what his least favorite win would be, that might be in the discussion because you didn't find a way to make them play worse. You struggled rebounding the basketball. You struggled on the defensive end of the ball. You struggled with turnovers. You struggled with free throws. You struggled with closing out the lead. You struggled with some of the small things. You just made shots. And those are not Bill Self's favorite games. But in the end, you got the win, and that's all that matters. And you can learn from those things. I think it's a lie if you say, oh, you can only learn from losses. No, they can learn from some of these things and win, and I'd rather have the win. Bench gets a bad goat here. 19 minutes played for everybody from the bench. The most was from Joe. He played 10 minutes off the bench. He had the only 3 points for the team. The only shots for the team, went 1 of 5. None of the 3 other bench players with Bobby Pettiford, Ernest Uday, MJ Rice took a shot. But combined with those 4 players, 19 minutes played, 3 points, 1 of 5 from the floor. They had 3 rebounds, and they had 6 turnovers. Now, Bobby ran into a couple charges that I don't know if they were charges, but Bobby ended up with 3. kind of struggled, and you didn't get as much this game from Ernest, who he also ran into some offensive foul trouble. He got a couple quick ones there. Again, bit of a tough whistle there that hurts that, but you didn't get anything from the bench, and we're kind of still going back and forth. You go back to January, you weren't really getting anything from the bench every game. At least now it's like, well, maybe like once every other game, you're getting something from the bench, which is important to at least get something on occasion, but it's still not to the level of where it was like last year. Once you got to March, once you got to the NCAA tournament, you were getting something from the bench every game. Remy Martin every game, Mitch Lightfoot every game. On the occasional game, Jalen Coleman-Lance. This year, that's not the case, and that is a little bit worrisome as we get closer to being in March. Charges in college basketball, those just get a bad goat in general. KU called for 6 offensive fouls in the first half, 1 or 2 more in the second half. Just so annoying, man. Free throw shooting also gets a bad goat. KU almost let the game get away with missing some free throws down the stretch, whether it was Jalen on the final one, Gradey Dick missing one toward the end. Like, KU just kind of struggled with those free throws. We've seen that be a problem at times. It almost came back and bit them in this game. But in the end, again, KU gets the win. 1 win away from a Big 12 championship, at least getting a split of it. We'll discuss that KU Texas Tech game on tomorrow's edition of the show. You can hit me up on Twitter at DJohnsonRadio. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. If you have somewhere you can leave a good rating, please do. Give us a thumbs up. It's super helpful on our end of things. We'll see you tomorrow on the next edition of Locked On Jayhawks. See you later today on RCST. Bye.